Imagine you wake up at 3, you train at 4, you go 4 to 6, come home, breakfast, relax, blah, blah, blah. Now you're back at it again, 9 to 11, relax, and now back at it again, 2 to 4, and now you're back at it again, 7 to 9. Look how much more training I have done by simply starting at 4. The important thing for me is to leave no stone unturned, get better every single day. And if I lived that way, then over time, I'd have something that was beautiful. And that was my philosophy. It seems like a pretty simple one, but if you live your life to just get better every single day, and do that for 20 years, what do you have? Overall, the idea is a very simple one. And, the MAMBA mentality simply means trying to be the best version of yourself. That's what the mentality means. It means every day you're trying to become better. And it's a constant quest. It's an infinite quest. To me, the mentality is a really simple one in the sense that the confidence comes from preparation. So when the game's on the line, I'm not asking myself to do something that I haven't done thousands of times before. When I prepare, I know what I'm capable of doing, I know what I'm comfortable doing, and I know what I'm not comfortable doing. Right? And so in those moments, if it looks like I'm ice cold or not nervous, it's because I've done it thousands of times before. So what's one more time? So starting at the age of 2, when I first started playing the game, and on and on and on, I always ask questions. I always try to get better every single day, learn more. You'd be surprised, like some people, like my kids at 2 could do a lot of things. Right? At 2, I could dribble a basketball, I could shoot a basketball on the Nerf hoop at the house, and I would go to practice with my father. I would observe my father. I'd sit and watch games with him. A lot of things I learned by being around the game. Right? So by the age of 6, I was already strategizing versus other 6-year-olds. At the age of 6, I figured out 6-year-olds couldn't dribble with their left hand. So like when I was playing these 6-year-old kids, I would make them dribble with their left because I knew they couldn't. And so they dribble off their foot, I'd pick it up, lay it up. Do it again, dribble off foot, pick it up, lay it up. So at 6 years old, I had 63 points. I just constantly looked for things to learn from and very observant. The passion came from the love for the game. I loved everything about it, like the smell of the ball, the smell of like brand new sneakers and like the sound the ball makes when it hits the ground, the ball going through the net, like all those things I love. And so the passion comes from that, because once you have that love, you just want to be a part of this thing all the time. I was born to play basketball, you know what I mean? And I played a lot of different sports, but nothing brought me the sense of peace and of escape, that the game of basketball did. When I need that escape, it's there for me, right? When I need a friend, it's there for me. When I need to vent and don't dunk, and it's there, So the game is absolutely everything for me.
I had goals, I had expectations and things I wanted to accomplish, and so like the outside world could not meet that for sure. Like, I knew I wanted to win like 5, 6, 7 championships. That was my goal. For me to come out and say that, people would think I was a lunatic. So no matter what they said or what they threw at me, my expectations were certainly higher. But you can't control that passion, man. Sometimes you just kind of have a fire. You need to keep those flames burning. Man, ain't nothing you can do about it. Like you don't really have much of a choice. Like you wake up in the morning and you go. Even if you tried to dial it back, it'll just build up, and then it'll just like come out 10 times worse than it was before. Can't really control it.
There's a quote from one of my English teachers at Lower Merion named Mr. Fisk. He had a great quote that said, "Rest at the end, not in the middle." And that's something I always live by. I'm not going to rest now. I'm going to keep on pushing now. There are a lot of answers that I don't have, even questions that I don't have. But I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to keep going, and I'll figure these things out as we go, right? And you just continue to build that way. So I try to live by that all the time.
What was really your work ethic like, and for how long did you stay disciplined?
Well, every day. Since for 20 years. It was an everyday process, and trying to figure out strengths and weaknesses. For example, jumping ability. My vertical was a 40, it wasn't a 46 or 45. My hands are big, but they're not massive. right? So you got to figure out ways to strengthen them so your hands are strong enough to be able to palm a ball and do the things that you need to do. Quickness, I was quick, but not insanely quick. I was fast, but not ridiculously fast, right? So I had to rely on skill a lot more. I had to rely on angles a lot more. I had to study the game a lot more. And but I enjoyed it though. So like from the time I can remember when I started watching the game, I studied the game, and it just never changed.
What does losing feel like to you?
It's exciting
Why is it exciting?
because it means you have different ways to get better. There's certain things that you can figure out that you can take advantage of, right? Certain weaknesses that were exposed that you need to shore up, right? So it was exciting. I mean, it sucks to lose,
Right.
but the hardest thing is to face that stuff. That's a really tough challenge. As athletes, the psychology is before you start a game, how can you lock in? You get into that mental space where nothing else matters. You're completely locked in and focused on what you're trying to accomplish as an athlete out here. The noise of the crowd doesn't matter. Whether the cheering or booing doesn't matter. You're just completely locked in. How do you do that?
If we're talking about, a basketball decision where, read a certain coverage or something like that, I mean, a lot of that comes from the pre-work and understanding what their defensive package is and how to put teammates in certain situations. For example, if you look at players nowadays that are charged with taking game-winning shots, or making game-winning decisions, and you look at the play and then you look at it and say, okay, well, that shooter was there, the double team came, and, the player couldn't do anything but pass the ball, right? Well, that's because they did do the pre-work. So when you do the pre-work, you understand, okay, this team in this situation likes to run a double team from this particular angle. All right, so I'm gonna clear that side out, force the double team to come from a different angle, move myself to a space on the floor where it's gonna take a long time for the double team to come, and now I can circumvent the double team and get to a place on the floor where I can knock down a shot or get to the basket. So it's all that pre-work. Well, I mean, here's why practice was important to me. Not from just the standpoint that I enjoyed playing. Like, I enjoyed being there. I enjoyed getting better. But as a leader of a team, it's also your responsibility to elevate the rest of the guys. And what people tend to get stuck on a lot is saying, okay, the way to make players better is to pass them the ball when they're open. That's a very trivial way to look at things. What you have to do is you have to get them emotionally to want to be better. You have to get them to an emotional space where they wake up every morning driven to be the best version of themselves, right? How do you do that? And in practice, for me, it was a chance to drive them, to challenge them, right? And this is where you have to know your teammates, because if it's late, we just had a back-to-back and we had practice the next day and you show up, guys don't feel like going through the motions, don't feel like practicing. It's important to know each and every one of them individually, personally, because then you know what nerve to touch. Some guys, it's like, okay, come on, let's, we can do this. That'll get them going. Other guys, no. You got to figure out what button to push. Powell was always Spain. If I tell them how they lost in a gold medal to us and how they're going to lose again, how I'm going to beat your practice just like I beat you in a gold medal game, he would hate that. But that's what practice was. You have to drive them. You absolutely have to. And if practice is more intense and harder than a game 7 will be, then a game 7 will be easy. But if it's not, then that's when teams start folding and capitulating. I think the best way to prove your value is to work, is to learn, is to absorb, to be a sponge. You always want to outwork your potential. As hard as you believe you can work harder than that. And that's what I tried to do when I first came in the league. But, basketball is such a direct competition sport. That competitive nature, the work ethic, and curiosity. Because I asked a lot of questions. Playing with Byron Scott, I asked him a lot of questions. Eddie Jones, who was great at chasing guards off the screens, and I didn't understand how to do that. I would sit with him before practice, after practice. Magic, James Worthy, Kurt Rambis, Kareem Abdul, all the Laker greats. I would always sit down and just ask them questions about certain games that I studied growing up. What actually happened there? What did you feel there? Why? Bird tough to defend. Why? Because you look slow to me. Like I'm missing something. So tell me what I'm missing. You know what I mean? And so I would always ask questions and try to learn as much as I could. I had a purpose. I wanted to be one of the best basketball players to ever play. And anything else that was outside of that lane, I didn't have time for.
At what age did that goal become crystal clear?
I made that deal with myself at 13 years old.
At 13 years old?
13 years old. That's the
you
deal
were
I
crystal
made.
clear about it.
Crystal clear.